Okay, folks, we are doing a preview review of Kor-Drath, The Reckoning. Kor-Drath, The Reckoning is the creator-owned property of Comicsgate King Andy Smith, who has worked at Marvel and DC. I happen to remember him mostly from his partnerships with fellow comic book artist Bart Sears. For example, they both worked together on the first iteration of Valiant Comics late in the game, doing Exo Manowar. They would alternate issues together, and then they would work together on the first for CrossGen. Oh, I miss CrossGen. But now we've got Andy Smith's own creator owned property, Kor-Drath, The Reckoning. And let's see what Kor-Drath, The Reckoning is about. Well, there's scarce information about it on the Indiegogo campaign. Kor-Drath, The Reckoning by Andy Smith. Star-crossed lovers, Kor-Drath and Adriana, must avenge the brutal slaughter of his tribe. By the way, you don't need a comma there. So that's sparse information, but it is descriptive enough to give us a general idea of what the book is about. Now, on the website Kor-Drath.com, that's kor-drath.com, we do have an expanded description of the book, but I don't like giving away that much information. So the only little bit that'll be here is they discover that the danger is far deadlier than they could have imagined. Okay. Still scarce information. The one other thing to tell you about Kor-Drath, The Reckoning, is that there's also a Dungeons and Dragons game tie-in. Apparently, they've gone through and created a Dungeons and Dragons game module to sell. This goes for, I believe, $20 either in PDF form or in regular book form. And in the description, we see Kor-Drath the Reckoning is Conan meets Game of Thrones, plus all the magical wonder of Dungeons and Dragons that combines two great genres. Experience the world building of the phenomenal land known only as the Shattered Reach. First, read the book and then play the game. Yes, the graphic novel and the SRD 5e gaming module go hand in hand to make this a unique and awesome experience. So they've created a Dungeons and Dragons gaming module to go with this particular book, which is pretty interesting. I don't think I've ever seen this kind of gaming and comic tied together before. So if you're into Dungeons and Dragons, maybe you're going to want to give this a try. I will say, with regard to the ad copy, putting yes in bold made me think that the name of the graphic novel was Yes, or that there was a graphic novel named Yes out there. So I would take the bold off of that copy. Oh, and by the way, not everyone knows that SRD means Systems Record Document or something like that in Dungeons and Dragons speak. I guess if you play the game, you know what that means, but not everyone does. I had to look that up. All right, let's go straight into the preview. And we start with an opening page with a lot of expository text on it. And I will write out, since it is hellishly small, I will write out the salient parts. In ages past, mighty kingdoms lay across the reach. The proudest nation, that of the Dracos, thought to enslave the kingdoms of the Reach, but the sons of man, elf, dwarf, and half-folk would not go quietly. The assembled peoples of the Reach fought to no avail. With their resolve on the brink of failure, the Camilu, the hermit-like arcane camel people of the desert, came to their salvation. Using the four stones of the elements, unparalleled primordial artifacts of great power, they compelled the sea to rise and swallow the Shattered Reach, just at the moment the Dracos had strained to ascend these lands into the heavens. I read this last part and I thought to myself, I'm not exactly sure what's happening here, but it seems as though the Dracos actually wanted to take the Reach and elevate it up into the sky for some reason. And instead of that, the Camilu came in and they used the stones of the elements to cause a great flood in the area. Now, why everybody didn't die in this great flood, I'm not quite sure. But apparently, the sea swallowed the Reach, and that caused a major cataclysm. Victory came with a price as the lands were scarred. The Dracos disappeared into the shadows. The races retreated into their own ancestral lands. Unpredictably, orcs and trolls ascended, not as adversaries, but as new civilizations. The humpbacked Camelou returned to the desert, engaging only in a limited amount of commerce. They split the stones of the elements apart and scattered them so no one race could wield such power again. However, the humans fragmented. Some sailed to the islands, others built cities upon the coasts. Yet others, and this part actually takes place on the next page, took to the mountains and hills. And by the way, I think it's a mistake that took to the mountains and hills appears on the next page rather than on this page, because what we're looking at on this page are the mountains and hills. I mean, this is the mountains and hills we're looking at, and this is how you tie in this picture to all of your exposition, because otherwise we're just looking at a general picture that doesn't really tie to anything. So if you finish off this page by saying, "Yet others took to the mountains and hills," dot dot dot, and then you can segue that into the action on the next page, which is a double page spread of a big fight going on, then you can at least tie this scene in with your text. So, one of the things I want to say about this first page is that this setup is kick ass. I mean, I'm really already reading this. I'm really getting into the book. It is such a good setup. You have got lots of races in conflict. You've got these lizard Dracos, the elves, humans, dwarves, halflings, and you've even got camels. Oh my God, when was the last time you ever heard of a race of camels in any kind of fantasy setting? And then you've got a massive war. You've got this reclusive race of camels. Did I mention they're camels? Wielding artifacts of power. You've got world destroying consequences because you've got this cataclysmic flood that, just totally screws up the land. And then we get set up for a quest because you've got these 4 stones listed at the bottom, with their names and their corresponding elements, and you just know that this book is going to be about going out for a quest for these 4 stones. They went and they scattered the stones so nobody could ever use them again. Oh, well, what do you think is going to happen? We're going to be going out and chasing after those stones for some reason. And the one thing that I really liked about this that is just mostly a subtle thing is how the human species is differentiated from all the other species in the book, because all the other species, they have their own lands, they have their own cultures, they're basically monolithic in their identities. But one of the things that this book sets up is the idea that humans are diverse. Humans don't have just one culture and one homeland and one way of life. There's some who live on the islands, there's some who live on the beaches, there's some who live in the mountains, and even within the mountains, as we'll learn on the next page, you've got diversity of clans, and the clans are fighting each other, etc., etc. So you've got humanity as this kind of unique species in the world who goes out and explores new lands and makes a home everywhere. And it reminds me so much about how we as humans differ from the animal kingdom in that, animals basically stick to their own territory unless they're forced out by some sort of cataclysm or drought or famine or something like that. And whereas humans have that exploratory drive where we'll go to the freaking North Pole just to see if we can last there for a few days. That to me is like a positive view of humanity in contrast with all these other species on this planet that makes humans automatically more interesting in this book than the other species. And somebody will probably come back and say, "Oh, that's speciesist." Yeah, whatever. However, I don't think this is without its problems. We do have some problems here, and the largest problem is that you've got this enormous setup with all these races involved in a huge war that's settled by these artifacts of power, and we got these world destroying consequences, and you don't show it to us. This is one of the things that I've learned recently about YouTube videos is that one of the things you really have to do in order to keep your reader's attention is you need to show your reader what it is that you're talking about, or in case of a YouTube video, you're showing your viewer what it is that you're talking about. Well, the same thing applies in comics. You're telling us all of this stuff happened, but you're basically giving us the equivalent of a screensaver to look at while we're reading all of this text. When, with maybe 3 or 4 additional pages in this 76-page book, you could have shown this war happening. You could have introduced us to all of these races. You could have shown the artifacts of power or not. I'll get to that in a little bit. And you could have basically told us the story of this massive war instead of leaving it to our imagination. And it just surprises me that this opportunity was missed. And the only thing that we get is like this huge, nicely drawn and beautiful scene. I mean, it's a very, very pleasant scene and all, but at the same time, it's like, I feel like, why would you not put your own vision of this war that happened and show us the consequences and show us the reach as a whole instead of just this area of the mountains and hills that are going to be referenced in the next 2-page spread. Now, as far as setting us up for a quest goes, some people don't exactly like quest books, and so I'm wondering whether or not, and this is one of those things that kind of rides on the edge. You don't really have to tell us about the 4 gems up front. You don't have to tell us that there's 4 of them. You can just say there's basically these artifacts of power. You don't even have to say that they're gems. Because right now I'm getting this kind of, Infinity Gauntlet vibe off of them. And you could basically tell us about how they used artifacts of power to stop the war, but kind of stop telling us about the artifacts there to kind of let us wonder whether or not these artifacts are going to be something that comes up sooner rather than later. There's room for mystery here, and there's also room for mystery in what those artifacts are. You don't necessarily have to define up front that they're gems or even give us their names and corresponding elements. Because what if later on in the book you decided, what would really be interesting is to have something like this or a set of 4 of these or something like that, and you could just leave it open for now. But to have this right there on the first page basically says, we are going to be going out for a quest for these 4 stones. And if you're in the mood for a quest book, then that's basically cluing in your reader, this is where that book is going. But what if your reader doesn't really want a quest book or doesn't know that he wants a quest book and thinks he wants something else? Then your reader might set the book down and say, I'm going to go pick up something else. So I would basically leave more of that in the dark. And then the last part about differentiating humans, basically the same objections. You can show me. You can give me a page that's like cut into thirds where the top third is the humans living on the islands. The middle third is a coastal city, and the bottom third shows, like maybe this section of, or the middle section of this page that we're seeing here, showing us the mountains and hills. And then we're going to go into the next 2-page spread, which shows us a fight in progress in those very mountains and hills, where we learn from more of the expanded text here that we've got 11 nomadic tribes, and each of these tribes has an animal totem associated with it. Right now, what we're witnessing is a conflict between the Red Lion tribe, which is the tribe to which Kor-Drath belongs. That's him there in the relative center of the 2-page spread. And then you've got the Anaconda tribe. And everybody in the Red Lion tribe, you'll notice, has a red lion tattoo somewhere on their body. Everyone in the Anaconda tribe has the green snake tattoo somewhere on their body. And one of the things that we learn is that the barbarian warriors who make up these tribes are prone to, or have the power to enter into berserker rages, and that's one of their main powers going into battle. So what we've got here is Kor-Drath fighting, and fighting against an ambush by the Anaconda tribe, And his chieftain, who is called the Jarl, uh, he calls out to Kor-Drath and he says, "It's time to go wild." So from this, we know that Kor-Drath is right about to go into one of his berserker rages. And sure enough, in the next panel, we see him let out a rebel yell. And then he says, "You have made a grave mistake on this morn. Your fate shall be painful." And then his eyes glaze over, and he's runs straight into battle and then chops the hell out of these people. Now, I feel like there was a little bit of a mistake made in the depiction of the Berserker Rage, because one of the things about a Berserker Rage is you basically lose your higher functions, and one of those higher functions is speech. So the fact that you've got Kor-Drath entering into the Berserker Rage, and then he's talking to the enemy, that doesn't feel very ragey to me. I would have restructured this lower left portion, and I would have basically shuffled the panels around a bit and gotten rid of the dialogue, so that what we would have is Kor-Drath letting loose his yell. You show his eyes glaze over, and then he runs directly into battle and then starts chopping the hell out of the enemy. That to me is a more accurate depiction of what a berserker rage looks like. So from this point, we have the Jarl of the Red Lion tribe finally encountering the Jarl of the Anaconda tribe, and they activate the power of their ancestral totems. They can draw on the power of their ancestors through their animal totems. In the case of the Red Lion tribe, he's got a tattoo on his wrist, and then you've got the tattoo on the shoulder, or the pectoral muscle of the Anaconda tribe Jarl. And they go and enter into a dual combat where you have the avatars and the two physical Jarls fighting at the same time. And so you've got a depiction here of the lion and the snake fighting at the same time that the red lion Jarl and the anaconda Jarl are fighting. And in the lower left hand, you can see that the cobra, or the anaconda, has got the lion wrapped up, and that causes, it seems, there's some symbiotic fighting going on here. That causes the red lion Jarl to trip up, and now he gets stabbed and pinned by the anaconda Jarl. So it looks like he's going to be down for the count. And one thing, but there is one thing that I don't like about this scene on the right, is that he placed the spirit animals on the right this time. When we were looking at the battle so far, start from the start, it was the spirit followed by reality, spirit followed by reality, and then when we got to the next page, it became reality followed by spirit. It's a very jarring change, and so what we were expecting to see up front, we don't actually get to see. I would have rejiggered this page so that the spirit animal conflict was on the left as it was in the previous two scenes, just so that the reader's expectations would be met by that panel. Well, Kor-Drath comes to the rescue, and he says, "Not today, false usurper," which, again, I think is a mistake because he's supposed to be in his berserker rage mode. So I would change that to something just like, "Argh!" And that way he can come to his senses later. Now, once the Anaconda tribe realizes that their Jarl has been killed, they sound the retreat, and there's this one Anaconda guy in particular who says something rather strange. He says, "We will return. We will return. I know how to best you next time." But we didn't actually get any sign of weakness out of the Red Lion tribe. In this case, any special weakness that was uncovered that this guy would have known about. So I don't know why he's saying this particular line. This, "I know how to best you next time." And is this supposed to be a significant guy? Because he hasn't been introduced to us. So I don't know who he is, if he's supposed to be special. He should be special if he's actually, taking time to talk back to the entire Red Lion tribe. Is he the inheritor of their Jarl? Is he the new Jarl now that the old Jarl's been killed? what exactly who exactly is this guy? And he should be introduced in this scene if he's someone special. If he's not someone special, he shouldn't be saying something as mysteriously consequential as "I know how to best you next time." It should be something just more like "We'll best you next time." Just so it doesn't make him out to be any kind of special person. The next couple of panel sequences, we show Kor-Drath helping up the wounded Jarl and then taking him back to the village, where he promptly is healed by uh, Kor-Drath's lover, Adriana, who has a power of life magic where she can transfer life force from, say, a potted plant or from Kor-Drath himself. In this case, she uses both in order to heal the wounds and draw out the poison that the Jarl is suffering from. And then Kor-Drath, being weary, is going to go off to bed. Um, Nothing bad in this particular sequence of panels. I don't see anything wrong here, and so this is the end of the preview sequence. And just to kind of recap, we saw a very, very strong opening page that unfortunately should have been about 3 or 4 opening pages showing us the history preceding Kor-Drath, this current Kor-Drath story. But it's a very strong setup with a very interesting premise. It does start off telling us in advance that we're going to be going on one of these epic quests, which, by the way, I mean that I noticed from the game description, it was saying that Kor-Drath is like Conan versus, or Conan meets Game of Thrones. And one of the things that Game of Thrones really didn't do was any kind of epic quest until it dispensed with the material that George R. R. Martin had put together and then sent, like a motley crew of people from each of the factions or something after to capture one of the whites and bring it back to be seen so that they would know there really was this magical threat coming from the south. That was about the time that I realized, oh my God, they must have run out of George R. R. Martin books because they would never go into this Tolkien-esque quest kind of crap. And yeah, I mean the whole Game of Thrones thing just went downhill from there. So I would strongly advise trying to make it more like early Game of Thrones rather than late Game of Thrones if you're really going to go with that Conan meets Game of Thrones motif. Um, the artwork, good quality. Writing, good quality. Just little tidbits here and there about placement of certain things, the how the Berserker rage was depicted, and I don't really have anything terribly bad to say about this book. This is an impressive offering, and it's one that maybe at some point in the future I'll pick it up and review the whole thing. But right now I've got several previews lined up, but I'm gonna go ahead and put the link to Kor-Drath in the Indiegogo campaign so that you can. I'm sorry, in the video description, the link to the Kor-Drath Indiegogo campaign. I'm going to put that link in the video description so that you can, if you want to, pick up a copy. It's currently set at in demand, so it's going to be open for a while. But go ahead and pick that up. If you're a Dungeons and Dragons gamer, you might want to also pick up the Kor-Drath game module that is associated with it. That's another $20 on top of the $25 for the comic. And beyond that, I think that's it. I'm Mike Partika. Thank you for watching. Please do subscribe if you haven't already. Share this on Twitter if you get a chance. I am on gab.com, and I will share a copy of my preview review out there. And feel free to join Gab and hook up with me there. Please do. I think I already asked you to subscribe. One of these days, I'm going to figure out some standard boilerplate thing to say at the end of this, and it's not going to be just a complete mess and all over the map. But it is not this day. This day, we stumble. So thanks again for watching, and I will talk to you later.